Good day. We're in our second week of our Designed for Relationship series for our victory group. The title is Follow Jesus. As a warm up, we have three bullets here. Recall a time you experienced a roller coaster of emotions. What happened? Do you usually go with the flow or chart your own course? Recall an instant explaining this. And third one, who is one person you would follow blindly, no questions asked, and why? For our word, we have from John chapter 6, verses 66 to 69. After this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. So Jesus said to the 12, "Do you want to go away as well?" Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? We have the words of You have the words of eternal life, and we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God." From the beginning, from the very beginning, God designed us for a relationship with Him. This starts by following Jesus, which is the most important decision you can make in our lives. It's also the most difficult decision. In John 6, we see how many people turned their back on Christ. While some stayed, Jesus had just fed the 50,000 and taught them a hard saying from John 6, verse 60. In our own lives, we're called to follow Jesus, even when it's hard and when others do not. From this passage, what does following Jesus mean? Number one, following Jesus uh, starts with a desire to know and understand Him. John 6, verse 60 to 61 says, when the many of his disciples, when many of his disciples heard it, they said, "This is a hard saying. Who can listen to it?" But Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling about it, said to them, "Do you take offense at it?" When what did Jesus mean by eating his flesh and drinking his blood? How were his disciples supposed to do this? They had given up easily and concluded that this was a hard saying. Because of this, they left. The truth is, following Jesus does not always make sense given our limited human understanding. Even when we cannot figure out the circumstances behind the teaching of Jesus, we should continue seeking and following Him. Question is for number one is, what is one teaching of Jesus that is hard for you to accept? That's something to think about. No, secondly, number two, following Jesus may mean going against the flow. John 6, verse 66 to 67 says, after this, many of his disciples turned and no longer walked with him. So Jesus said to the 12, "Do you want to go away as well?" Not everyone will follow Jesus. Not everyone will keep following Jesus. Not everyone will agree with your decision to follow Jesus. When this happens, will you still follow him? When everyone else is turning away from him, we may choose to do what is right, even when it means going against the flow. Why do you think Jesus asked his 12 disciples if they wanted to leave him as well? Why was it important for Jesus to ask them this? Why do you think it's important? Free will. Jesus wants to follow his followers to have free will. And number three, following Jesus means believing in who he is and his word. John 6, verse 68 to 69 says, Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life, and we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God. Simon Peter and the 11 other disciples probably did not understand all that Jesus was teaching, and they could see others turning away from Christ. Yet Simon knew that they had nowhere else to go. They had believed in Jesus and followed him for who he is. Even when we don't understand a lot of things in our life or our faith, we can understand, we can trust Jesus who has the words of eternal life. We believe and follow him despite confusion, pain, and suffering. Do you feel and think as Simon Peter did? Now, the whole topic is stands about the context of these verses is the when Jesus says, uh, "Will we eat his flesh and drink his blood?" People did not really truly understand this. They felt it's cannibalism. I think up to now, people think the same way. If the disciples who left only continued to remain with Jesus and seek understanding, they would have known that eating his flesh and drinking his blood meant believing and following Jesus, as is stated in John 6:27 to 29, verse 35, verse 40, and 47. When we encounter difficult teachings and things we don't understand, let us continue to trust in the person of Jesus and seek him for guidance. There are three applications for today's lesson. Tell us about how and when you decide to follow Jesus. What has it meant for you since? Then the second, in what area of your life is following Jesus difficult? How do you think you will be able to go against the flow? And the last one, do you believe that Jesus has the words of eternal life and is the Holy One of God? How will this belief affect your daily life? Something to ponder, something to meditate, something to think about. As a prayer, we thank God for Jesus' invitation to follow him. Pray that you would follow him even when you or others don't understand. Declare you trust and declare your trust and faith in Jesus Christ as the Holy One of God. Pray that you would follow and love him more as each day passes. And thirdly, pray for your relatives and friends who don't know Jesus yet to follow him too. And that's it for today's lesson. Follow, like this, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and God bless you all. Thank you.